problem is, I know God is able. Ooh-wee. Sickness and sorrow, barren from pain. He's been a roof over my head. He's been my shelter from my storm and rain. Came to let you know, yeah. He brought me through. He did the same thing for you, yeah. Storm after storm. Stand the 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 storm. Sometimes I stumble, sometimes I fall. Through all of my mistakes in life, He see me through them all. Oh, my brother, He helped me to bear. Wipe the tears from my eyes. He remind me that He really cares. Sickness and sorrow, bearing from pain. He's been my shelter from promised to be there for you. He brought me through. Storm after storm. Oh, He brought me through the storm. What my wife have gone through. She had a tumor on the brain. 12 long hours and 2 surgeries later. We lost our son in a motorcycle crash. If it ain't one thing, always something else. But I come to encourage you right now. After having done all you can do to stand, some storm in my life.
Oh, somebody ought to tell the Lord thank you.
Lost sister, but I don't dwell on the bad things of life. You know what, George? It's never goodbye. But I don't want you to help us tell our family member right now. See you later. See you later. See you later.
Good morning. This is Pastor Mitty Collier of the More Like Christ Christian Fellowship Church, located at 8201 South Dobson Avenue in Chicago, Illinois, with your words of inspiration, invitation, and prayer from the altar. Today, I want to ask you the question, do you fear the dark? Our scriptures can be found in 1 Kings 19, verses 1 through 10, verses 11 through 15, and verse 18. It was cold and dark. The burning heat of the desert through which he had run all day had given way to an unforgiving rawness that penetrated to the very core of the man lying in the dark night. He had run as far as his legs and the light could carry him. And just as his strength was running out, he spotted a small juniper tree, which was actually a flowering bush that flourished in the wilderness and provided shade for flocks, herds, and travelers. Taking his last labored steps, he got to the tree and collapsed at its roots. He was exhausted, and he did a wise thing. He prayed, but it wasn't a wise prayer. He told the Lord, "I've had enough, so just let me die." Then he gave his reason. He said, "For I am no better than my fathers." But God never asked him to be better than anybody else, only that he would hear his voice and obey it. As he lay there, his mind was filled with the scenes of the previous days. He was the one who had stood upon Mount Carmel and defied the 450 prophets of Baal, taunting them in their futile cries of a non-existent God. He had gone through a traumatic experience when he stood before that altar, prayed to God, and fire fell from heaven, and the blood was scarcely dry on his sword with which he had executed the 450 false prophets of Baal. Then there was a tremendous rainstorm, which was the greatest victory for him. The Jewish people depended on the seasonal rain for the success of their crops. If the Lord didn't send the early rain in October and November and the latter rain in March and April, there would soon be a famine in the land. But the blessing of the rains depended on the people obeying the covenant of the Lord. God warned them that their disobedience would turn the heavens into bronze and the earth into iron. The land belonged to the Lord, and if the people defied the land with their sinful idols, the Lord wouldn't bless them. So we are introduced to this man in chapter 17, when he walked into the court of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel and announced the latest weather report. He told them that there would be no rain for the next 3 years. The people were following Baal, and the Lord could not send the rain and still be faithful to his covenant. He always kept his covenant, whether to bless for obedience or to discipline for sin. So God held back the rain because of the fervent prayers of this man. For 3.5 years, this man's word, the power of his prayers, would control the weather in Israel. Now the time had come for him to pray again, pray for the Lord to send the much needed rains. And God answered his prayer. The rain fell. It was him. When the rains came, Queen Jezebel was in Jezreel and must have thought that the storm god Baal had triumphed on Mount Carmel. But King Ahab arrived home and gave her a much different story. Ahab was a weak man, but he should have stood with this man and honored the Lord who had so dramatically demonstrated his power. But Ahab had to live with Jezebel, and without her support, he knew he was nothing. Neither Ahab nor Jezebel accepted the clear evidence given on Mount Carmel that Jehovah was the only true and living God. Instead of repenting and calling the nation back to serving the Lord, Jezebel declared war on Jehovah and this man, and Ahab allowed her to do it. On this wild, windy, stormy, and dark night, this harlot queen sent a message to him threatening his life. In a moment of fear, when he forgot all that God had done for him the previous 3 years, he took his servant and headed for Beersheba, the wilderness of Judah. God had answered his prayers, and God's hand had been upon him in the storm. But now he was walking by sight and not by faith. For 3 years, without hearing and obeying the Lord's instruction. But now he was running ahead of the Lord in order to save his own life. When God's people get out of God's will, they will do all sorts of foolish things and fail in their strongest points. His courage failed when he had heard Jezebel's message. His tortured mind and body were trembling at the prospect of royal revenge as he cried out, "Please, Lord, just let me die." When the heart is heavy and the mind and body are weary, the best remedy is sleep. He needed rest. The Lord knew this, so he put this man to sleep, and he slept like a baby. Suddenly his shallow sleep was disrupted by the touch of the angel of the Lord, who said, "Wake up, wake up." And he came to his senses. He could smell bread baking on the hot stove. The same one who had prepared that breakfast for the disciples on the shore of Galilee one morning after the resurrection was baking bread for him. Opening his eyes, he spied a jar of water that had been placed next to them. He had all that was needed to sustain him in his self-exiled spot. He ate, and the Lord put him back to sleep again. We are not told how long he was permitted to sleep before the Lord awakened him a second time and told him to eat again. God knew that this man planned to visit Mount Horeb, which is Mount Sinai, one of the most sacred places in all Jewish history, where Moses received the 10 Commandments. It was the mountain of God, the place of God's heart. Sinai was located about 250 miles from where he was in the wilderness of Beersheba, and the Lord told him that he needed strength for the journey. It doesn't matter what our destination may be, the journey is too great for us by ourselves. You may think that you are sufficient for the battle of life, but that journey through life is too great for you. You need a helper. You need God's strength to reach your goal. This man was strengthened and went 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Horeb and came to a cave where he sat down in the darkness. And as he grew still, the Lord asked him, "What's the matter?" He replied, "Lord, I've done the best I can do, and it's not enough. Now they want to kill me. Nobody understands. I am alone." It was him, you all, him. The prophet Elijah, showing us a portrait of fear. Fear seems to throw itself in front of us at every turn, making us want to run away and hide in solitude. The lie that inspires fear is that we are alone. Living under the influence of fear will cause you to spend your life running away and avoiding. What a difference it would make to be able to see the presence of God amidst our fearful circumstances. Fear is an emotion that has the capability of shattering us, freezing us in our tracks, melting us into ineffective paralysis. It is stationed like a guard at the frontier of all new things that we could do or experience in God. Look at him, Elijah. He ran, retreated, and made his home in a cave. And when the Lord asked him, "What are you doing here?" Elijah's reply didn't really matter, answered the question, which explained why God asked it a second time in verse 13. In his reply, Elijah revealed both pride and self-pity, and in using the pronoun they, he exaggerated the size of the opposition. He made it look like every last Jew in the northern kingdom had turned against him. And the Lord, when actually it was Jezebel who wanted to kill him. Instead of the excuse, "I am alone," he should have said, "Lord, I'm here because I fear Jezebel." Fear is the oldest and first emotion mentioned in the Bible. When the Lord called Adam and asked him, "Adam, where art thou?" He replied in Genesis 3:10, "I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." Adam was afraid because of the consequences of his sin. His fear was the result of his separation from God. Fear is the strongest of all the emotions that we experience. I believe that God listed fear as the first influence we encounter because it is the strongest negative influence, and it keeps us separated from Him and His purpose for us. Elijah told the Lord, who already knew that he had experienced many trials in his ministry, but he had still been faithful. Well, if he was such a faithful servant, what was he doing hiding in a dark cave located hundreds of miles from his appointed place of ministry? It was fear that was separating him from the purpose of God. Elijah showed us the influence that fear can have upon our lives. We have been shown the portrait of fear and the influence of fear. Now let us get an emotional profile of fear. When we live under the trembling influence of fear, we feel afraid. To be afraid is to be filled with and controlled by fear, which has the ability to dictate how we live. If we don't check it, fear will tell